evening, everyone. Thank you for coming in. Thank you, Amir, for the lovely introduction. So this paper is part of a larger collaborative project between Lancaster University and IIT Kanpur on food insecurity in India. This is the team. Jasmine is the principal investigator. Then we have Sukumar, the co-PI, and 3 qualitative researchers who were in the field in both the states conducting field work. Ankita, Charumita, and myself. So this is broadly the presentation plan where I discuss a certain social protection program in India. Come to my research focus, discuss the methods that we employed in the field for data collection and the methods for this paper and broad reflections. This is still very preliminary. We are looking at a lot of feedback and questions and thinking through. So before jumping to the midday meal scheme, there's only merit in talking about social protection as a key policy intervention, which has firmly established itself as a way to fight against historical socio-economic disadvantages in several countries. Countries are gradually forming a network of different policies under the ambit of social protection, in which all of these policies talk to each other in order to ensure dignity and a minimum standard of living to its participants, also known as beneficiaries. So this social network continues throughout the life course and is prominent at certain junctions. One of the social protection program that is almost universal in so many countries have adapted it is the school meal programs. They have served as social safety nets, targeting not just the child and his or her education and nutrition, but also their family at large and providing support to the family. You can see the statistics quite self-explanatory. India has the largest school feeding program in the world, which is called the midday meal scheme, that is MDMS. We're going to discuss this further. The MDMS, which started in 1995, what led to this program? Of course, everything has a history, and India's nutritional landscape with high rates of undernutrition and malnourishment only provided the ground for a scheme targeted at children that would also help households. But it was very difficult to implement it in India, particularly because of the dietary preferences of a country which is so diverse and so sensitive in terms of religion and caste and gender norms. So it was only obvious for the government to invest in early childhood development programs and improve access to affordable and nutritious food and put focus on education, empowering women and girls and promoting healthy diets were one of the key aims of this policy. If you look at this slide, what I started with, that countries are gradually moving towards creating a network of different policies speaking to each other at different junctures. So here we have a policy for livelihood precarity, for maternal and child health and nutrition. And they talk to each other, and there are a lot of overlapping boundaries, each feeding into the other. If you look at the nutrition policy landscape over the years, in 1975, we had the Integrated Child Development Services that was particularly targeted at women and children. And it led to the creation of Anganwadi centers, which proved to be shelter homes for women and children in providing support to women during their pregnancy and the lactating phases. Then there was a National Nutrition Policy in 1993, and then we come to midday meal scheme. After that, there were several schemes that sort of strengthened midday meal scheme, and it has had its evolution adapting to the demands of people. This is not a linear progress, certainly. So many states in India. So every state had some version of the midday meal scheme, but it was not a legal mandate. So there was a lot of diversity, heterogeneity. But with the scheme, the program was more or less standardized, but the cultural norms were respected. States were given the freedom to operate the policy based on the norms and the dietary preferences of a certain region. Why a study of this policy is needed now? It started in 1995. It's going to complete 3 decades in another 2 years. So it's about time to reflect the journey of MDMS through the 3 decades. So when the MDMS started, it was focusing only on students from class 1 to 5. But gradually, the scope expanded, and now the MDM caters to classes 1 to 8, students of classes 1 to 8. When the scheme started, certainly all the states took their own time to implement the scheme, and there was an interim period. In the interim period, states were asked to provide dry rations. That is, instead of hot cooked meal, they could give dry grains to the families and to the children. That was going on for a long time. Supreme Court had to intervene after public interest litigation was filed. And Supreme Court mandated that within 6 months, this policy needs to be implemented in a standardized way in all the states. And that happened. Why this information is necessary? This information is necessary because the scheme is not just the vision of state, but also what people wanted from the scheme time and again, and how the judiciary intervened. For instance, in 2004, it's mandated that even when schools are in vacation, the schools need to serve midday meal to children, especially in drought-prone areas. So understanding that this meal has a role to play beyond education. In the next decade, it was expanded to classes 6 and 8. This could be a very natural outcome of the Right to Education Act, which was implemented around that time, which made it a legal mandate for the country to give free universal education to students from 6 to 14 years. So certainly this was also expanded. And around this time, the program, which was known as the nutrition support to primary education, came to be known as the midday meals. In the last decade, there has been several changes owing to the changing demands and what people are accepting. Midday meal as it stands today, free hot cooked meals for children attending primary and upper primary classes. Food includes rice, lentils, vegetables, fruits, eggs, or a combination of all of these things. The way in the cultural norms governed by caste structure and religion governs Indian landscape, there cannot be a standardized menu. Some of the states, there has been a conflict amongst the states regarding inclusion of egg in the meal. Egg, very nutritious, but it goes against the fundamental of vegetarianism, which is so much linked to religion, caste. So the midday meal scheme cannot be understood by not understanding the cultural landscape of the country. This is, we can just see that from classes 1 to 8, the meals are served, and children are from 16 to 14 years. So suppose, and this is basically the schooling structure in India. So suppose there is a school which has students from class 1 to 10, so only 1 to 8 will get the midday meals and 9, 10 won't get the midday meals, right? 118 million children and 1.12 million schools. Several scholars have studied midday meal scheme quantitatively, qualitatively, and seen its beneficiaries and benefits, and seen how the scheme has in fact, had positive outcomes. But the way studies have been structured has mostly been quantitative studies or studies focusing on supply side determinants. And when the demand side determinants were focused, it was, again, very quantitative, away from the lived experiences of people. The scheme was for three broad goals: education advancement, child nutrition, and social equity. The social equity component was very important, as I mentioned earlier, because of the caste structure in India. And food is so much related to the concept of purity and pollution. Who should cook the food? Who can eat it? Who can touch your food? What is pure food and what is impure food? So scholars like Thorot and Lee, they have argued that they've observed that in neighborhoods, if a school is in an upper caste neighborhood, then the marginalized sections or the lower caste, they feel discriminated. They don't feel comfortable having the meals in a situation where there is active oppression. What are we getting to the table? What is this paper about? These series of pictures were taken by me when I was a PhD student, and my field site was a school. I was not doing a studying midday meal scheme, but I had taken these pictures. So precisely, I am critiquing what I understood. We are looking beyond these pictures, children in queues and children eating together, sharing food. Who are these children? How are they anonymized? What do they feel when they stand in these queues? And is midday meal scheme about just these children and not about the families who send them here? Is it not about the state, especially in neoliberalism? So these are the questions we are going to ask. What is the research focus? Pretty straightforward. What do children and the families think about the midday meal scheme and its role in their everyday life? Why is this question important? Because studies focused only on children's experiences fail to do justice to what people expect from social protection scheme in terms of their identities and aspirations. So we're looking at the complicated interactions of individuals and households with MDMS, and building on it, we are asking a larger question. What are the circumstances in which families become a part of these schemes? And how does this inclusion or exclusion impact their identities and aspirations? As I mentioned, we are focusing on intra-household qualitative rich data experiences. We are looking at the complicated interaction, not just about the scheme, but about food, hunger, livelihood, education, and what are people, how are people storing their life around MDMS? We are using an intersectional lens because you cannot understand the experience of a scheme with a straightforward one-size-fits-all approach. You have to look at the social context that shapes these norms, shapes these policies, and shapes experiences. And we are, so this is the map. This is the field sites. One is Uttar Pradesh and one is Goa. You can see a state which is so big and the other state so tiny in terms of population and spread of area. In Uttar Pradesh, we visited several districts, but in Goa, we just visited one district. There are anyway 2 districts in Goa. We visited one district and limited to 3 regions, heavily populated by migrants. This is the broad socioeconomic demographics of Uttar Pradesh and Goa. You can see in terms of the population and the rural percentage, urban percentage, they're different states. We went into the field with one roster, which had most of the factual data, and we had 8 specific interview guides. One instrument was for 7 to 13 years, the other was for 13 to 18, and then we have adults. We could have many more, and we didn't want to limit to these 3, but this was only feasible. And here we were talking to each member of the household, unless somebody wanted to not talk with us. And the questions broadly covered these themes. In social protection programs, we're talking about PDS, or the public distribution system, and the subsidized grains are given, and the MDMS. We were talking about care work, child labor, experiences with food insecurity. Food is a sensitive topic. To talk about food, you need to talk about everything else that food brings with it: your livelihood, your education, and child labor, and gendered norms. This was a time just right after COVID. So a lot of these responses had COVID specific memories. So if you were asking for a recall period of 1 year, people often shared experiences of COVID and the problems faced during COVID, a time when midday meal was stopped. This is a sample. We visited 87 households. And in Uttar Pradesh, we went in 2 phases, 2 qualitative researchers at a time. And in Goa, we went once. We tried to maximize diversity in terms of caste, religion, and different types of family structure. We have around 429 interviews, and it's a difficult task transcribing them and analyzing. So we're still there. For this paper, we are using narrative analysis, and we're seeing how people story their world and how people want to speak about MDMS, not what we want to hear. It's not about dropout. It's not about retention. What do people want to speak about MDMS in their own words, in their own stories? Now, I will quickly come to the households. For this presentation, I've just picked 6 households. Otherwise, it would have been too cluttered. And I want you to go with me with the family structure and understand the family structure and where they came from and what they said and the meanings of those experiences. So the first household is a Hindu Kshatriya family in Uttar Pradesh in Kanpur. I will refer to them as household 1, and father, mother, daughter, and son. That would be easy to talk. And the male member worked as a driver, and in Indian currency, I've just converted it. It's 120 pounds per month. That is the salary. The female worked as a domestic help, 50 pounds per month salary, and 2 daughters and 1 son. So if you look at the age group, 19 and 16 years, that means they're outside the MDMS safety net already. So what they're speaking about MDMS is about their experiences in the past. They've had the time to reflect and talk about it. So it's at least 4 to 5 years gap is there, but the son was within the net. I have titled this slide as standing in a queue for free food, shyness, stigma, and dignity, because these were the key concerns that came across through their narratives. And these interviews were long. They were long interviews, and midday meal scheme maybe just featured for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, but there were so many other things that these people were sharing. A little bit background of the family. The family was based in rural India, and after some family conflict, they shifted to urban location. Initially, they lived in a very peri-urban sort of informal settlement. But because they wanted to give good education to their children, they moved towards the center of the city, and something that they could not afford. So the female, the mother decided to work as a domestic help. The father shared that how he discouraged her because being a domestic help is stigmatized in the Indian society. But she constantly said, it's for my children. I will sacrifice for my children and give them a better life. So here is a family who are prioritizing education, who have a certain aspiration. Talking to these families, I've just put in some quotes and I'll build the story. The mother told that while we were asking, was there midday meal school in this served in the school? And she said, no, it's not served. Again, after asking, after 5 minutes, she told it is served, but my children don't have midday meal scheme in school. They don't like the meal. So then when we asked that they don't like the meal, or is there any other reason? So what do they eat? They told they're too shy. They just don't want to stand in the queue and get food. So the popular imagery of children standing in a queue, washing their plates, like we need to go beyond that. However, in another context, the mother told, but I take the blame for this because I've always taught them to respect food and not to eat free food served anywhere. So even if it's a religious ceremony, now they feel ashamed to go and ask for food. It's an upper caste family. You cannot understand the story without understanding the caste dynamic that is running over here. So So children have internalized these norms from the very beginning that free food is a taboo. So when they are put in a school system where they have to stand in a queue, they felt uncomfortable. The mother shared that one of the daughters said, I can't be holding a bowl and standing with everybody else. So the feeling of shame, shyness, and stigma has to be complicated and understood not just from the perspective of midday meal scheme, but gendered norms, caste structure, and religious beliefs. Because the son gave a very objective reply. Food is good. I stand there. Food is fine. He didn't elaborate further. But the daughters insisted that they didn't like standing in the line. They didn't like the food. Coming to the second household. The second household is in, again, Uttar Pradesh. It's a single mother household, a Muslim female, and she has 4 children. 3 daughters, 1 son. All the 3 daughters were in school, and the son, who was 8 years, he dropped out of school because he had to take care of the family. We could not talk to the son because he was working while we were in the household. Here, something different happened. The mother shared that children like midday meals. It's not about the taste, but they like the feeling that everybody is same. Because earlier, when they used to take tiffin boxes and open it and see that what they cannot eat and what others can eat, that gave them some other type of shame. And that made them, that was sort of public humiliation, what food you can have in a school premises. So a scheme which, in a way, in the first household, the daughters felt uncomfortable standing in the line and asking for food. In the other case, these daughters, these children, they really liked the fact that everybody was equal. So in a way, school meals invisibilized their identities, their religious identities, the class, the fact that she's a single mother working in an area where women didn't work. Coming to household 3. In household 3, in Kanpur, the male member is a daily wage worker. He gets into seasonal painting. That means he will not have a regular income throughout the year. Monthly income is around £100. The mother was not working. This was a joint family setup, but they had their individual kitchens. And they had 2 daughters and 1 son. One of the daughters agreed to talk, the other did not, and we talked with the son. All 3 children were taken out of the school during COVID because of financial constraints. When the father was asked regarding the midday meal scheme, he just linked midday meals with education. He told that there's no studies in the schools. We have food, we can afford food. Food is something I can offer my children. Anyway, we just eat lentils and rice. They don't need to go to a school for that. And there's no study anyway. It's better we keep them at home. He even told that MDM is only for children and not the families. So it was not a very big incentive for them. Probably drawing a correlation with the PDS, which is the public distribution system, where the family gets food grains, the family gets lentils, and not any individual. She also mentioned that they sometimes give biscuits, sometimes dalia, sometimes khichdi, that type of food they get. Stigmatizing the food that was served, getting a class angle to it, that the food that is served is not is a big incentive to send their daughters and the son to the school. He instead preferred to send them to a private school. On another instance, when he was talking about debt and how much loans he has taken, credit he has taken, he told that, social performance is very much necessary. If you go and ask for money, when people know that you don't have money, they will not offer you money because they know they're not going to get anything in return. If you are hungry, you go outside and you look visibly destitute, nobody's going to help you. So you have to project yourself in a certain way. And so he enrolled all three of his children in a private school. He preferred asking them to drop out rather than putting them in a government school, because that was against his self-image or self-identity that has been created. So it just shows that decision-making of sending children to schools and which school to send and is so complex, so nuanced. It's not just about the children. It's also about the households and family identity and aspirations and where do they see these children going. So private schools in India, different types of private school, it just for 20 rupees in INR should be how much? 2 cents. So in a very minimal amount, they had put the daughters in private school. But both the daughters decided they don't want to join a school, and they started working as domestic help workers in an elite neighborhood. The mother told they were not anyway getting good food in the school. They don't have to study. We have to save money for the dowry. At least they're getting food in the place they are working. And the place where they're working, she gives them good food, better than the food that is served in MDMS in schools. And for the son, both the parents told that he's the only son. So we will think about educating him. So rather than completely shifting him into a no education mode, they had put him into a private tuition in the neighborhood where he was at least, in touch with the education system. When the daughters were asked about the problems at home, they didn't speak much. They told that there's no problem. We just didn't like to study. And during the interview, the mother was constantly interfering, and the mother was constantly saying they didn't study, shifting the blame to these young females that they didn't want to study and was spending so much money, they didn't want to study. And the daughters told that they like to work in other people's house, and that's and the money that they're getting. The father was like, we are not keeping that money for household expenses. We are saving that money for their own marriage. These days, if we can get one of them married by saving for 10 years, it's enough. So whatever money they are giving, we are investing it on themselves. But the son very clearly in Hindi told, "Ghar mein dikkat aayi, padhai chhod di." There were problems at home, so I left studying. These stories intertwine and tell us that it's the MDMS and these policies has to be visualized beyond the food narrative. Children, often in socio-economically disadvantaged positions and marginalized communities, have to shoulder in responsibilities and drop out of school. These precarious conditions shape their experiences of the schooling system and the lunch and the meals that is sought. So it also talks about the opportunity cost of education for these families. Okay, this is household 4. This is in rural Kanpur. This is the entire family were engaged in farming and daily wage laborer in other people's farm in sharecropping. And the son was a construction worker. So if you see the household structure, it's like grandparents. Then there's the son. The son has lost his wife. And there's another son. Okay, so I'm speaking from the grandson's perspective. And so grandson is just 10 years. When the grandfather and the father both were asked about the midday meal scheme, it's the same thing. You know, he gets just food, just some vegetables. There's no study. There's no study. And one of them told that I have worked in these school buildings and I see these government school teachers and I know that they don't teach. So why will I send my children to a place where anyway there's no food anyway we are cooking? The son, in fact, he is he has been a very special respondent for all of us, for all the stories that he shared throughout our interaction with us. When he was asked about midday meal scheme, he expressed so many things. The first thing he told that it's that the quantity is not enough for him. He's 10 years. He's like, the quantity is not enough. Just to give a broad idea, 400 calories of food and 12 grams of protein is served to like lower primary children. And for sixth, 7th, 8th, I think it's 700 calories and 20 grams of protein. So this child, he told that it's not enough. Then we asked that, can you go and ask, can you get a refill? And he responded, no, we can get a refill, but if you want to enjoy the taste of food, you want to eat it slowly. If you want to eat it slowly, then other people will go and get food and the food is over. So you have to decide if you want to enjoy the food that is being served to you, or you really want a refill in terms of the quantity. And when he was asked that, did you like the food that was served in school? Because this is the question that we were asking everywhere, like, what is your understanding of the food? And usually children are like, they like home cooked food. There's more variety, there's more masala, more spices. In school, food is boring and bland and less. But he is like, there was just 19-20 ka fark. Matlab, the difference is very minor. If the food is good here, it is bad there. If it is bad here, it's good there. It's like we were eating similar types of food. This also speaks that what children experience, how children experience this scheme is shaped by what they eat at home also. What they eat and what they want to eat. So in this case, the child is like, we eat the same food. So while several children in UP complained about the quality of food, he did. He's like, it's the same food that was served. On another occasion, he again, he was from an upper caste family. He shared that how while serving the food, when I was talking about midday meal scheme, we saw the social equity angle to address caste discrimination and prejudices. But now it has become very subtle. It is not out there that teachers will come and intervene. It's so subtle, so ingrained that it happens. For instance, he has never experienced it, but he was sharing that we hold our plates and teachers give the food on our plates. So while I am holding the plate, but there are a few other people for whom the plate is kept on the floor and food is served over there. So we asked why. His answer was, because they are dirty. Again, a very casteist way. He has internalized the norms and he has seen what he has seen. He's like, I have never experienced it, but the teachers are confused. So this school caters to students from several villages. So the teachers knew about the caste status of the students in the same village, but they were unsure about other people. So this used to happen. So while the adult, the grandfather and the father told that the food quality is bad and it's just bad food, bad education, the child didn't feel so. He liked the food, he liked the school. Coming to the last household, this is a family in Goa. A scheduled tribe family, Lamani tribe in Goa. And the father is a daily wage laborer who has migrated from a certain area and come here for better opportunities. The mother is a domestic help and there are 3 children. Both the daughters didn't get MDM while the son was getting MDM in school. So when the mother was asked regarding the type of food that is served, she told that it's a government school. It's a good school. This is a different state. This is not Uttar Pradesh. This is Goa. This is a different context completely. She told that I have to pack food for the other children. So even if one person gets and the other 2 are not getting, there is a problem in that. So this shows the social context in which probably families experience the MDMS differently in different geographical landscapes. And of course, there's political intervention over there, the local NGOs partnering for it. But the children were saying that the food was enough and we can ask again, and it's good food. A very just like while we're talking to this child, we also interviewed his friend and his family. While they have the same age, there was a difference in weight and height. And the other boy told that the food is not enough. I have to take food from home and plus have MDM in school. And one of the major difference between Goa and UP is in UP, the food was served in the lunch, midday, in the lunchtime. But in Goa, it was in the breakfast time, in the early, before lunch. So the food not being enough was a concern more in more in Goa than UP. While I'm talking about UP and Goa, in no way I want to compare between both the states. There can be no comparison whatsoever. We're just looking at the patterns of interactions and how individuals and households are negotiating with their identities as beneficiaries. Overall reflections. So what we found is that experiences with the scheme is complex and layered, and you need to focus on the social context. Adult perception of the MDMS is often linked to the quality of education, aligning their aspirations and goals about their life or livelihood. Children's ideas were mostly shaped by their experiences in the school, with friends, with teachers, the type of food that it served. But it varied across socioeconomic contexts. Age and the quantity of food and state specificities stood out. In fact, in the same village, if there are two different schools, the type of food that was served, the quantity served, it varied. What we understood from so many of these experiences is that if MDMS is a supplement or it is a substitute, it really mattered. Is it the only food that children are having during lunchtime? Or is it adding to something? So we are still going through the narratives and seeing those different layers that are standing out. Where do we go with these reflections? Asking few questions. When we are looking at barriers to receiving school meals, we look at a certain type of barriers, often binaries, quality of food, quantity of food. We need to look at these barriers from a household perspective. We need to focus on an intersectional lens. Through this, we are asking another important question, that can social protection beneficiaries be aspirational? What are their aspirations? And when you label them as beneficiaries, how do they negotiate with what the state offers to them versus what they want from the state? Another aspect of this paper is theorizing shame, not just in terms of caste and class, but also people's association with the state, especially in the neoliberalist time, where the responsibility is on the beneficiaries to at some point come out of the protection network and lead a better life. So the responsibility is on the beneficiaries themselves. Bringing all of these together, we will want to answer that what is people's relationship with social protection schemes in particular and the state in general. Yeah, that's it.